How have you approached the play? Where have you set it?
Well, this is an unusual production for me. Usually I pick a play because I want to do the play, and I would always want to do this play. It's one of my favorites. But this production began, as you now know, with the idea of these two actors taking part. And that clearly was going to be the main reason that most of you would want to come and hear it, would be to hear these two wonderful actors playing. And so I wanted to try and remove as many things that would get in between you and Vanessa and James. So I didn't want either of them to have to take on a dialect, an English or an American dialect that was foreign to their own way of speaking. I didn't want to particularly put them in a period that was obscure to them or would involve them taking on mannerisms or ways of dealing with clothes that would be foreign to them. I just felt we would all really just want to have as much of them and their understanding of these parts as we possibly could have. So one thing about this play is that there's a war in the background, and no one speaks about it very much apart from at the very beginning. And in Messina, where the play is set, there are very few young men. There's a lot of women and mostly elderly men. So it made me think quite a lot. And the soldiers the men have to be in some kind of uniform. So when you move a play from Shakespeare's period into another period, the difficulty is if there's a war somewhere in the play, because then you're really bound to some kind of uniform. And we started by looking at so we looked at wars that the Americans and English have been involved in together. And I think we were drawn first of all to the First World War. And then we discovered that actually in the First World War, African Americans were only allowed to take supporting roles as people who didn't fight. The racism was still so strong at that time that there were beliefs expressed by very credible men and women that Americans would be too cowardly to fight in a war, that they might turn and shoot their white fellow soldiers. There was a lot of ridiculous thinking still going on at that time, as there is now in many areas. But the one thing was that we wanted the soldiers clearly. Claudio clearly has done something very bravely at the beginning of the play. It's mentioned that he's been very brave. And so we then discovered that there was a very famous squadron called the Tuskegee Airmen in the Second World War. And these were the first African Americans who were allowed to participate in a fighting role. And they had to fight very hard to get that. So there was a saying amongst them, the V for the Tuskegee Airmen was victory abroad and victory at home. That if they did well, they would not only help in the effort to defeat fascism, but they would also help in the effort to defeat these racist ideas that they were somehow inferior to anyone else. And so that became a very interesting aspect of the Second World War. And so that period became more in that James could be part of that squadron, and all the Spanish people in the original play could be African American soldiers or American soldiers who were over here fighting from an air base somewhere near an English country house in Kent or somewhere like that. And so therefore the setting of the play as some kind of escape from a war that's going on outside the walls of where the play takes place, that landed eventually in some English house near an American airfield where the Americans were so bravely flying their daytime raids over Germany, which was an extremely dangerous thing to do. And then that turned out to be a fortunate thing in that during the rehearsals, James and Vanessa, of course, were alive at that time. Vanessa remembers standing in a field in Warwickshire or somewhere like that and seeing the glow of Coventry burning in the distance from some air raid. So, and James, who served in the armed forces at one time, was able to help all the young men with the correct American military behavior and attitudes and things like that. So they both were able to contribute not only their acting skills, but also their life experience to what we were doing. And as I say in the program, I don't have anything to say about the Second World War or 1944 by setting this play in that period. I'm making no comment about that period. It's just a landscape and a time in which I feel the larger issues or beautiful things that happen in the play can be made manifest, I suppose. You have to put actors in some clothes, and so you have to put them in some period. You have to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.